Thank you so much. Aloha and good morning, everyone. Aloha and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much to Christine and Brittany and Rebecca for putting this together. It's so wonderful to be spending time with you today. So let's just dive right into our introductions. So to make it fun, I thought we'll share who we are, the library that we work in, and if you could have one superpower, just one in all the world, magical or real, what would it be? So I'll start with you, Kristina.
Oh my gosh, so you sprung that question on us. Okay, so let me make sure I got the first two parts. Is name and institution, is that right? And then superpower. Okay, name Kristina Alayan. I've been at the University of Maryland in Baltimore for about 1.5 years as the Associate Dean for Library and Technology. Superpower actually is funny because this morning I was like, oh, if I could have anything right now, it would be the power to not need to sleep. Like I would get so my to-do list might, start seeing some, it wouldn't be growing in the way that it is. So I think that currently would be my superpower of choice.
I love that superpower. We can get everything done.
I absolutely love sleep. So that would be horrible for me. My name is Rebecca Dent. I am a reference librarian at Columbia. I was previously a reference and instructional services librarian at New York Law School. And if I could pick any superpower, it would be that I could eat and drink whatever I wanted and never have to worry about my waistline, period.
I love that.
Yeah, that's my superpower. That's what it would be.
A delicious and the energetic superpowers. I love it. So I'm your moderator today. I'm Jenny Silbiger. I'm the state law librarian for Hawaii, the Hawaii Supreme Court Law Library. And I was thinking about my superpower, and actually I was thinking it would be so wonderful if I could just speak any language in the world.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, and it's really about connection, right? So being able to, wherever you are, wherever you find yourself, being able to communicate with someone, no matter what the language was. So I thought that would be great. Anyway, yay, I love these superpowers, everyone. So let's dive into our first question. So I'll just go to you, Kristina. How does the mentor process work?
So I'm going to tackle this question from sort of two angles. One is like the formal, and then there's the informal. So the formal, we're so fortunate through AALL, there's the mentor-mentee program. So people opt in to the program, so you're not automatically enrolled. So either as a mentee saying, hey, I'd love to have a mentor, or as a mentor saying, hey, I'd love to have mentees. And that's a phenomenal, I think, really, really organic, wonderful member-driven program. You fill out a quick form, which actually just helps the folks at ALL match people sort of, if you want someone who works in a particular library or have certain sort of demographics or experiences, and you can articulate those. The informal mechanism, of course, is many of us actually very naturally and organically develop those relationships over time as professionals. I think all of us have experienced that in one way or another. Rarely have I heard of situations where people actually walk up to someone and say, will you be my mentor or will you be my mentee? Instead, it's usually a shared experience or a shared interest, but both can be incredibly fruitful and rewarding.
Yeah, and I would just jump in and say, I could never go up to somebody and say, would you be my mentor or anything? Like, I'm just kind of not like that at all. I'm very friendly and fun, but the idea, I've had a lot of informal mentors just sort of by nature, but having sort of a way that I could, when I found that this was a program, knowing that I didn't have to then worry about doing it through the networking process, especially because I was new to the field and also was looking for my first job at the time, that I had an avenue that I could do that without having to feel kind of overwhelmed by like where to start. And then really just by incredible luck got paired with Kristina. So, and not just that, but our sort of mentor group, which is a very important sort of part of my professional life. So.
No, I love that. Thank you so much for those thoughtful answers, because I was just kind of thinking about especially the informal, it's really about shared experiences and about who people come into your life and out of your life. And it's such an organic process. But I also love the formality of it too, especially when you're new to a profession. You can't just go knock up on somebody's door like, will you be my mentor?
Sure.
So it's really good that they have a way to matchmake us in a way that's effective and considerate of everybody involved.
And also the mentors want to mentor, so that helps. Not everyone has time to sort of take on a new mentee, even if they want to, and it's wonderful. These are people who are actually they're saying, I am available for people that are interested in being mentored, which is really wonderful.
Yeah, that's a super great way to start, right? Because they have the energy and the time because they're invested. Yeah, I love that.
I want to add one other aspect to that really quickly, which is there is almost the implication, and it makes sense, that it's always the mentees that are sort of craving mentorship and, oh my gosh, they're so worried about being a burden and things like that. And the formal system helps alleviate that because for a fact that they've opted, these mentors have opted in. But I also want to make clear, and I'm really speaking for myself, I adore mentoring. It is just one of the most rewarding things that I can do as a professional. So I have often found myself meeting maybe newer professionals, and I so badly want to be like, oh, I'd love to give you advice, but I don't want to be overbearing. I don't want to be the weird lady that's like, you need a mentor. I'd love to be your mentor. So it helps on the other side too. So I think I want to make, and it's something that I think will come up over the course of our conversation, that this really is a mutually beneficial relationship. So it works for both sides in really beautiful ways.
Yeah, I love that. I think we kind of really are touching on our next question that we have here about what prompted you to begin your mentor and mentee relationship. And can you share a little bit about how it began? So I'll go with Kristina first and then Rebecca. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'll talk first, maybe I'll go general and then more specific. So in general, I would say, sort of my mentoring experience started by being mentored, right? So that was my first sort of insight into mentorship and how that could look and how that could develop. I was really fortunate that I had really amazing, organic, informal sort of mentoring relationships that grew out of different sorts of contexts, right? It might be somebody that I worked with and reported to directly or indirectly. It might be through a AA committee or, something like that. And that experience was so rewarding for me on the mentee side of things. And as I developed experience and expertise, part of the impulse was I want to give back. I want to pass this forward or pay it forward rather. So that was definitely part of the impulse. But then after being on the other side of it, I was benefiting so much too, right? And I think we've all experienced, feelings professionally where we're like, oh, I'm overwhelmed, or, oh, this isn't really what I want to be doing today. But bright spots for me have always been relationships and people, and particularly, I would say, newer professionals who are coming in with amazing ideas, incredible energy, and reminding me of what I love so much about this profession and the people in it. So it is absolutely mutually beneficial. One of the things I would say then more specifically about the relationship that Rebecca and I have been fortunate enough to cultivate is that we did go through this formal mechanism. So I, signed up as a mentor through the AALL website. She did it on the other side. We were matched. I created some interesting formats that are maybe a little bit unique that I'm happy to talk about because I think they're easy to emulate for other folks who are interested in doing the same thing. But that's sort of how we started out.
Great. So for me, when I was first, this is like my third career. So I was trying, it's like the combination of my last two moving into this one. So, and it was really an organic process that kind of got me into profession, but I still, I knew this is what I wanted to do, but I also needed to prove to people, you've never done this before. How are you going to do it? And I just knew, okay, you have to do things that you haven't done before, things, you've been in this other field for a long time. You've never had to sort of explain yourself that way because your background is so clearly laid out this way. So I knew I need to take advantage of whatever opportunities are sort of given to me. And I don't actually remember how I found the mentor program, if I had got a AALL email or if I was just playing around on the website, but somehow I came across it and I just thought, okay, there's no downside here. You know, first of all, we're in the Zoom world because it's COVID. So, you know, I don't have to make time away from my kids to like go and meet someone. And I need to hear from people in the profession so that I can just learn from them to begin with, and then also sort of get tips about what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing, and then kind of move along from there. And I remember when I got matched with Kristina, I sent her an email like straight out of the gate because that's how I roll. And, you know, she was like, hang on a second, like we're going to get the group together. And it just ended up being like so far, it far expanded any of my, what I thought it could be. Not just the relationship that I have with Kristina, but also that I got a group of people who are sort of earlier in their career too, my sort of fellow mentees who are like my colleagues now kind of going forward. So, you know, we have like a text thread that goes all the time, and, you know, everyone's always talking about what they're doing. And it's really, really wonderful. It's funny because I was thinking your formal mechanisms, because you had questions originally that you were going to ask, and I feel like we never need to get to them because the whole group just starts and goes, and it's really great. So
Well, I love that because it is touching on both the formal and informal organic ways about how relationships, meaningful connections grow. And I did want to circle back because Kristina, you did mention you have these implementation ideas and mechanisms. So of course I'm like, oh, what could they be? Could you please share them?
Yes. So, and I can't even tell you, I should have gone through my email to try and like take out the legislative history of my thought process. But at some point, what happened was I realized, like many of you, that my time is limited, and I wanted to sort of maximize the opportunity for me to share myself with others, and also sort of what others and mentees, of course, in this context, could get out of me. And so if I set up, for example, 5 one-on-one meetings with individual mentees, I mean, first of all, it's going to be really hard to schedule, but at some point, the version of me that's going to show up in that 5th meeting is maybe not going to be the best version of myself. And so what I suggested initially, as like these different mentees were being funneled to me through ALL, was like, well, why don't I ask if they'd be interested in meeting as a group and just see how that works, like as a cohort. And so what we actually started doing, and I do think there were silver linings to the pandemic. And one of those was, you know, meeting over Zoom was ubiquitous, and sort of having multiple people on a call was a really functional thing in a way that I don't think would have occurred to me as naturally as it did in that context. So amazingly enough, 100% of the mentees that ALL funneled to me agreed. They were like, oh, this is a great idea. And the way I framed it too was, I didn't frame it as like, my time is limited, so I really need you all to meet at the same time. What I said was, I'm thinking that this would be, and of course, this is like genuine, I think this is a great opportunity to bring newer professionals together. You're going to have questions that others are going to benefit from. You're also going to be able to brainstorm together, build out your own network organically, and I'm still available to you all one-on-one. So each of the mentees have reached out to me one-on-one for like resume help, cover letter help, running through presentations, running through discrete problems or challenges that they're working through. So I'm still available, but it's more in a on an ad hoc basis. These meetings, and we have them, they're now once a month, and currently they're scheduled, I forget now, it's the first Wednesday, I think, of the month.
Yeah.
And we're scheduled to meet for an hour. We often run over, which is totally fine. But people hop on and off as their schedules allow. Sometimes everyone shows up. Sometimes it's just 1 or 2 of us, which is fine. My commitment to them is I will always be there for that hour, and it's for them to use when and if they need it. It's not an obligation. And whenever we come, and Rebecca was talking about this too, very early on, because I was worried about maybe not having enough structure. So I was like, we can read articles together and review articles and discuss those, or we can focus on like specific questions or problems. But what we found is among the group, there were enough unique challenges that just naturally were coming up professionally that we were just addressing those in our monthly get-togethers. So I mean, it's just evolved beautifully in ways that I really couldn't have imagined. The text thread is a really good example. They are helping each other out. So there are times when there's like a flurry of text coming through and I don't have time to chime in right away. They're giving each other advice in ways that is incredibly empowering, refreshing. I'm benefiting. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of it that way. Like, that's a really good perspective or thing to point out. So it's just really evolved into this great thing. And now, and I just sent an email out to the group a couple of days ago, I'm bringing in other people. So I was joking earlier of like being the weird lady that's like, hey, do you want a mentor? I basically did that actually though. I met this wonderful newer colleague through the ISLE conference that was just in Stanford this past week. She's incredible. And I was like, hey, you're newer. If you want to join this cohort that I have, we'd love, to have you. And of course I asked the group first before adding anyone in, but the group, every time I've asked is like, they're like, yes, of course. So it's just been really, it's just exceeded my expectations in so many ways.
And also I just want to say, because you didn't mention it, we have what's called Vegas rules in our meetings. This is very important. It is a safe space, especially because sometimes it's hard. We have a small profession. Sometimes you're just having a difficult situation and you need to hear, you need to air that and hear your tips to handle it. So we keep that very, that's a very important quality that we value, that we all share, that this is a place that you can come, and talk about something and get your advice, and that is not going to be shared anywhere that you don't want it to. And I say that as something that's important because sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it could just be that you're in kind of like a tough spot and you don't really have a good way to go. And you want to be able to share that honestly and then get the feedback from other people. So.
And I would add too, I mean, it applies to me as much as to them. So, I mean, at the beginning, I was like, I will want to share experiences with you or, institutional things that have happened or that I'm aware of, and it needs to stay in this space. And so it's just as important to me as I'm helping them through things. Because if the best advice in my experience has been the transparent, candid advice, but in many instances that information can also be difficult if it goes beyond, a certain group. So I think that that's something we all, value a great deal.
Yeah, I love that. And it's very important to stress that safe space. I love the Vegas. Happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas. Okay. But and also I love the evolution of your mentorship, your initial mentorship mentee role, and then it expanded. And now you have this wonderful network where you can bounce ideas off one another. And I think we all need that wherever we are in every state of our career, is to have people that we trust and be able to share this idea. So I love how this is flourishing in your mentor-mentee relationship and your cohort. So Kristina, you have so much experience and knowledge. I'm like soaking up everything you're saying. So how long have you been mentoring new librarians?
That's such a good question. I should have looked at my legislative history. So I would say it's a weird question. Actually, I think a lot of us, particular sort of mid-career professionals, are like, is it too much to think that I can mentor, right? Like, you don't want to be like, oh, like, that feels like too much, or, you need 30 years of experience before you can be a mentor. And I would say, and our cohort is such a great example, they're mentoring each other, right? Like, I'm the so-called mentor, but really that mentoring is happening at the lateral level as much as it is sort of, to the extent that I'm the one with more experience in the group. So, I think probably when I felt more comfortable thinking of myself in a mentor, sort of hat capacity was probably when I transitioned into management. But I think that was wrong. I think I didn't need that, right? That had nothing to do with my ability to share experience or expertise with folks. So I would just, say to anyone on the call who's thinking about it, like, am I ready? Am I not ready? Yes, the answer is yes. You're absolutely ready to share your experience with others, to help people brainstorm through things. If you're coming to that sort of relationship with the intention of helping someone, yes, you're absolutely in a wonderful place to be a mentor and benefit, mutually from that relationship.
And the profession really needs it. There's there's a shortage of law librarians. So the more that can be sort of outreach that's happening, then the better, in my opinion, to
Yes.
kind of bring people into the fold and sort of introduce them, especially, we're not all JD MLSs, but maybe you're in library school and there's opportunities for you too, but you might not have ever thought of it. Like, I could work at a law firm. Well, maybe you would really love it, but you need to meet the people that are doing it to understand if that's true. So.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. I mean, you see our AA my communities every other
Every
day.
day.
Somebody looking for something. I was like, woo, things have
Every
changed
day.
since I've come into this profession. And you're right, Kristina. I feel like if you have any experience at all and your goal is to uplift and help people to work in our environment, ta-da! You have the qualifications to be a mentor.
You've been inducted.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, this question is for Rebecca. Have you had other mentors or similar relationships prior to Kristina? I think you mentioned this in the beginning. And how have those experiences affected your current mentorship?
So I really haven't. And I don't mean that in the sense that people haven't mentored me, because I have been I've had like wonderful relationships with sort of many of my bosses, but I am not the kind of person that really like seeks out advice that well. So I sort of kind of do things in my own bubble and sort of expect, I get my reviews and I chat and I'm friendly, but I have a very hard time, I will feel like I am taking up too much of somebody's time. Like, I have that sort of internally where I will feel like, well, who's going to want to take me under their wing? And to be honest, I also didn't actually discover my true career calling in life until I was like 40 years old. So that's another reason. So I wasn't necessarily interested in being mentored the same way, because I knew I wasn't necessarily in a career path that I wanted to continue. So again, like I stressed before, for me, having the formal program and knowing that you were actually being matched with somebody who wanted to do that kind of work it took that pressure sort of off me, and that feeling of, well, I don't have to just go up to people. I don't have to do it that way. So, and I don't want to like discount any of like the wonderful people I've worked with over the years. I haven't had that kind of relationship in a professional setting ever. So.
No, thank you so much for sharing. And I think that comes from challenges if we're changing careers or we're changing settings. And I am looking at the Q&As. We have some really intriguing questions that have matched what we've been discussing recently. So the first one that came up is, can anyone speak to challenges advice mentoring someone transitioning between types of libraries, public to law firm, for example? And I think, switching career types altogether would apply to that too. And then there was a really compelling question about trust issues. So let's go with the mentoring someone transitioning from types of libraries, and then we'll go into the trust one second after that. You want to take that, Kristina?
Sure, I'll start out. So I think there's all kinds of really interesting transitions that people experience as they're moving through their careers. I mean, one is certainly between positions, titles. There's transitions between institutions. There's transitions between sectors. We're usually thinking law firm, government, academic. And I think in all of those, it can be a pretty fraught period, even for people who are really comfortable with change, because you're moving from something that you know well or well-ish to something maybe that you know less well. Ideally, you're finding one of two things: either someone who's experienced a similar transition, and that can be hard sometimes. I think transitioning between sectors, since that was the question specifically, is becoming more frequent. I think that was much less frequent, maybe 10, 15 years ago. I know so many people now who've made similar transitions in really interesting and compelling ways. So that list is getting bigger and bigger as we speak. So I think that would be my first recommendation, is to try and find someone who's experienced that. But even if you can't, or you don't feel comfortable, you can still find someone who's maybe comfortable with change, or someone who's transitioned into just a new workplace. I mean, that's still a very similar and analogous process. How do you build new relationships? How do you learn the culture? How do you learn, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's a lot of analogous strategies that can be used, even if it isn't precisely, you know, the exact thing that you're experiencing or anticipating.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, especially when you're going setting to setting, or type of library to type of library, or someone coming from regular librarianship, like ALA style, to AALL style. There's a whole different language that we have to learn. And that kind of goes with every setting. So it's not only the skill basis that you're learning, but also how do you speak the language of the people that are at your institution? Because we all know you can't get anything done anywhere unless you can speak the language of what's going on around you. So thank you so much for that answer, Kristina. So the next one question that came up, and and I think this goes back to your cohort of what stays in Vegas. So this one is about what do you recommend? What do you recommend for those with trust issues? And I think this is for both of you, Rebecca and Kristina. I've experienced in-department harassment, sexual and gender-based, at all of my jobs thus far, and that hurts my heart 100%. And this has been permitted or brushed aside by people in position to mentor me, putting me off from being a mentee. So did you want to take that? Do you want to start, Rebecca, and then Kristina?
I mean, it's hard. I mean, we established the rules from the jump, so those kind of topics would be on the table and very much listened to, and any advice given. I mean, there has to be a level of trust there. And I don't know necessarily, besides trusting Kristina, how we sort of all implicitly trusted each other. But I think we set those ground rules pretty early. I think that was one of the first things that was said. And then, I don't know how to describe, like we work in different parts of the country. So, you know, we're not necessarily in each other's orbit, so that you could like share, you know, you weren't necessarily talking about somebody that somebody knew, which I think helped. But that's, I mean, it's very hard, because it's very hard when you're not listened to. But within our group, that would be something that we would probably spend the entire session on, just with that topic alone, and then probably continue the conversation over text as long as we needed to.
Yeah, I mean, I would add a couple of things, and I say this like through the lens of someone, I have trust issues. Like I take a long time to like truly trust people. I like hold, you know, a lot very close to the vest. And so it's really hard, I think, for some of us to trust people, either because of the nature of our character or because of experiences. Like it sounds like this person has had some really unacceptable experiences in terms of where their trust has been violated. I think in a way, and if I'm reading the question correctly, in their context, it sounds like a lot of that trust violation was taking place in a professional context, like a supervisor or a colleague or someone that they worked with. That I think is actually harder than what we have, which is, and sort of Rebecca laid out the foundation, right? Because we're coming from such different places. And in a way, because we've all sort of agreed that we care about this mentoring thing, whatever that is going to mean for us as a group, it is only going to work if we can be vulnerable and open and honest with each other. And I will say too, you know, as the person who kind of created the foundation for the thing, but then it evolved in like these amazing ways that I just couldn't have even anticipated. It's been really, truly beautiful, not to be like super corny, but to see the trajectory of how trust in particular and vulnerability in particular has really organically grown within this group, even with the addition of new people, because new people have sort of been sprinkled in as we've grown. Rebecca was part of sort of the original core group. And so that changes the dynamic too, right? So like, let's say you have, as we did, you know, this core trust, this core group, and then I'm introducing new people, like with permission. And so we kind of have to revisit what trust means with this new group. And I just have to say, with each addition, we've just found such true loveliness and openness and vulnerability from the people who have joined. And I do think on the one hand, part of it is that it only works if we can agree to these norms. But I think the other part too is there isn't really, even if there was a bad actor that joined the group, which would be, first of all, just really weird. But I mean, there isn't a whole lot of information, even though it would like probably hurt us in a way, you know, to have that information released without our permission. It wouldn't actually damage us, right? Like in a professional context, it would just be like, you violated my confidence and my trust in a way that is problematic. So I think that's a different sort of relationship than if you work with somebody. So yeah, I mean, I think it has worked really well for us. I don't anticipate that changing given just how organically we've been able to integrate new people into the group.
Yeah, thank you so much. And, you know, just to address that question again, you know, trust is something that is earned. And clearly the people that you may have reached out to did not earn your trust.
Right.
But I'll tell you this straight from my heart, that these experiences that you have experienced are unacceptable. And I promise you that there are people out there that you will be able to trust around this, professionals that will take you seriously and hear you and see you. So so I just want to touch and thank you so much for your advice and sharing your experiences. You guys, we have so much like amazing comments. So I just want to uplift these, okay? So Mary shared that Rebecca just mentioned the fear of taking up too much of a senior person's time and finding that a formal program relieves that fear. I encourage junior people to remember that seeking a more experienced person's advice, perspective, or take can be a gift to that person. And we aren't generally in the profession for the piles of riches we get. Having someone care about what we can have to say can be very rewarding. And it is true. And to follow up with that, Jocelyn, thank you, Jocelyn, for your comment. Could you talk about what sort of mentoring you've gotten from your mentees? So a little bit more, Kristina, you touched that in the beginning. I think that younger early career professionals have a huge number of skills that can be beneficial to people who have been in the field for longer. So what has that mentoring up looked like for you? Oh, you're on mute. Oh yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things. One is, you know, and this happens, so in my experience anyway, it happens all the time where I'm like, I have an idea and I put it out into the world and I'm like, my idea is so great. And then others take my idea and they do something so much better than what I had even like originally conceived of. And this is a good example of that, where I had this idea. It was going to be a good way for me to sort of manage my own time and benefit the group, right? So there's this mutually beneficial thing happening, but then the way they ran with it, the way they mentored each other is such a good example of how newer professionals can come into spaces and do things that just didn't even occur to those of us with our ideas or our experience. So yeah, absolutely. And part of that is maybe, you know, a newer perspective, a fresh set of eyes, a fresh way of thinking about things. But I just want to also sort of expand this idea of, no matter where we come from, like on this experience spectrum or identity spectrum or whatever it is, it's the diversity of those sort of perspectives coming together, in my experience, that really leads us to these amazing outcomes. And so creating opportunities for that sort of engagement to happen and creating a space where it wasn't limited, right? Like I didn't say like, these are the rules for our cohort and you must abide by these rules. Like the way our text thread, you know, explodes, the way, you know, we've had personal conversations, things that had nothing to do with the professional, you know, world. But as we all know, the personal is deeply integrated with how we show up at work and the way we deal with what's happening at work and how our personal lives are intertwined with those things. And so we talk a lot about all, you know, sort of the holistic aspects of how we show up in spaces. And I think that's been largely because of the way they have shown up in these meetings, right? I didn't set that up. I just created this space and then they ran with it. So I can't speak highly enough or more about this particular group of people, but I also think as much as, you know, our experience is unique, I absolutely think the format will work for any other group of people that want to do something similar.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love that so much. And just off the cuff, you know, I've had the opportunity just to meet and welcome newer professionals in our career. And it's just been so invigorating. And actually my mentee's on this call. Hi, Amanda. So thank you for, okay, so the next question, actually, I'm going to, wait, check the chat. Okay, we're good. So Rebecca, can I ask you, what makes a good mentor?
Okay. Well, again, like I said, I really feel like I just kind of like won the lottery with Kristina, and that was AAL's pairing. Okay. But I will just say from just my own experience is for me, and I'll really talk sort of like specifics, like Kristina taught me how to advocate for myself. I can advocate for someone else, but our group happens to be all women. That's just by chance. And, women generally don't, we take the salary that's offered to us. We take the benefits that are offered to us. And Kristina really taught us how to then come back and say, actually, this is really more appropriate, and then come up with your reasons and how to advocate, articulate that. And not just that, but for me, coming into the profession, she really empowered me in the job market. Like I had never done anything like a presentation to get a job. I've never heard of such a thing, except in this world, the academic law library world, right? And, Kristina, I put my stuff together. She said, we'll do a one-on-one. I did my presentation for her and then got our comments and then went ahead like 2 days later and did it and got the job. And then when the opportunity came up at Columbia, I was, as Kristina knows, I was very hesitant about applying, and I just texted her and one of the others who also that I didn't put this on the big thread, a separate thread. And I just said, look, they're still hiring. Like what, I don't know when this opportunity is going to come up for me again. And they both immediately were like, you have to apply like right now. And then I basically got the job in a week. And so as Kristina said, texted me once, she wrote me, when I took the job and everything, she just wrote a text that said, Rebecca. And then she said, Rebecca, think about this. You weren't even sure you were going to apply. And now you have the job and you got what you asked for. And I was like, yeah, I did that. But I did it because I was supported to do that. And I hope in the future, when I have a few more years under my belt, to then give back to others so that they also can benefit from that same experience.
Oh, I love that. A whole 100, like 180 full circle about the empowerment and the advocating that Kristina gave you to be able to pursue this. And also, I just want to say on the side, for every group text, there's always a subgroup text.
Well,
but it's
I mean, I just didn't need everybody to weigh in on that one. And there was a reason I selected who I did. It wasn't about them. It was just
100%.
Yeah.
It's just like the nurturing of relationships, and that's what happens. And it's all for the supporting of you and encouragement and empowering and advocating. And it's wonderful. And I love that story. So, so yes, so empowerment, advocating, helping, and supporting. Okay, so the next question is kind of mirroring back to Kristina about what makes a good mentee. And you shared a lot about folks taking their energy and taking initiative and really moving forward with each other. So do you have further comments and observations about that question, Kristina?
Yeah, so I think, and some of it is, specific to sort of this cohort model that we have, but I'll try and sort of bifurcate it a little bit. So the cohort answer and then sort of maybe the more traditional one-on-one answer. So in the cohort model, and I would say, and again, this is not because I said or did anything to set this up. They did this on their own. Like one of the things that I have adored the most is how much they cheerlead and encourage each other. I mean, it's just like like I could, like if I let myself, I could get all teary-eyed about it. I mean, it is absolutely heartwarming to see how much they are invested in each other's success and each other's victories and each other's, I mean, from the big to the little, like big, of course, getting a job, but littler things too, like, oh, I was nominated for this award, or I got this, you know, comment from somebody that really meant a lot to me. And just the extreme, like, congratulations that show up, you know, from the other mentees is just like blows me away. So
Yeah,
I would
we're
say
friends. I mean, that's
yeah,
we're friends, and that's it's what which is wonderful.
it's
You know,
it's really a love. Or like if we met in person for the first time at Denver, you
yeah.
know, so I mean, it was just like all that loveliness, you know, happening. And so I think, and that's not to say though that there aren't hard conversations that happen, really emotional conversations, things that are really difficult to talk about, personal, professional, whatever, and leaving space for that too, because I think it can't all be about, you know, the things that are wonderful and we want to celebrate. So the fact that this group of people is willing to sort of embrace the diversity of experiences that everybody has. One of the things, this is a quick aside, but you know, Rebecca knows this all too well. So I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to the Enneagram, and people are probably like, oh my God, like what is she talking about? Long story
Take
short,
the test. Take the test. Yeah.
long story short, it's for people who are interested, it's a way that you can potentially identify the things that motivate certain behaviors. And so one of the things I asked everybody, and they indulged me, is for them to each take the test and see if it resonated with them. And we learned a couple of things which were so great. One is that most of us are different numbers on the Enneagram, which is perfect because you want a diversity of perspectives, a diversity of approaches. And so having that, I think, in the group has been incredible. And then I'll skip quickly because I know we're running out of time. The one-on-one, like how you can maximize, I think, for your mentor, the one-on-one is coming with questions, having your own ideas about what you need from your mentor. Because I think all of us can sort of wax poetically about here's what worked for me, or here are the things I've observed. I'd much rather give you some insight about things that are specifically relevant to your situation. And if I don't have the answer, I will connect you with someone who does, or ask somebody else and then come back to you.
Yeah.
And so it allows me to make sure I'm actually giving you the best version of myself, because otherwise, you know, you're sort of operating in a vacuum.
Oh, I love that. Can you put the name of the test? What is the name of the test? Someone was asking.
It's Enneagram,
It's fun.
ENNEAGRAM. Yeah, it's like you can find all kinds of like, kind of hokey versions of the test. It's fine.
I remember when I took it and I did it like in our meeting, and I told them, and Kristina was like, "Oh, I knew that," and I was like, "Yeah." That's what I thought.
I just love.
But it was totally true.
Okay, so thank you so much. I love this conversation. This is from 9 to 9:45, right? So we're right at that mark. But I just wanted to make a couple of observations and kind of circle back to your superpowers in the beginning, okay? Because the more I'm listening to you talk about commitment to each other, encouragement, trust, hard conversations. So Rebecca, I'm interpreting your superpower as nourishment, okay? Being able to eat and drink anything you want, anytime you want. But I took away
Yeah,
from
and
that.
also like being, you know, raised in like 90s dieting culture. So
yeah, and
that
it's
too.
that too. But okay, but also I just think about all the fun food you can eat and all celebratory, and that could be a shared experience. But then,
for sure.
Kristina, your superpower with your sleeplessness and getting that's just unlimited energy and commitment that you can give to your mentees. And I feel like it all just comes together so beautifully in this conversation that we had. And I know we're supposed to wrap it up. Oh, thank you for putting it in the chat, Kristina, about the Enneagram test. But do you have any advice? So I'm just going to skip to the end. Do you have any advice before we say goodbye to someone considering becoming either a mentor or a mentee? Just a few words. I'll start with Kristina and then Rebecca, and then we better wrap it up, right? Because I feel like they might shut us off. So go ahead, Kristina.
The super quick thing, the most important thing, I think, and this is just based on the concerns I've heard on the mentee side, is when people say, I want to be your mentor, trust them. When people sign up to be a mentor, trust that they actually want to be a mentor. So because that, I think, becomes such a barrier of like, oh, I don't want to burden them, or it's too many emails or whatever. No, if they have put themselves out there in that capacity, please trust that and engage in that relationship openly, fully, because that's the way the two of you are going to get as much out of it as possible.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Just don't be shy. Just, you just have to send an email. Like, just have to fill out a form if you want to do it this way. There's no pressure on you. AALL does the rest. You don't have to. I mean, I'm just saying you don't have to worry about it. You're getting paired with someone that has already also filled out the mentor form on their side. So they are saying that they are making that time commitment and you are not a burden to them. So
I love that. I love that so much. And I loved also just that concrete, if you're looking for concrete advice about how to start with this, if you do submit and you entering in the relationship, I love that idea about have a tangible issue that you want to address with your mentor. And then together you can start brainstorming, because I just feel like that, or, it can organically expand into further conversations, into shared experiences, which actually starts that pathway towards the trust aspect, which develops so beautifully in the relationship that Kristina and Rebecca were sharing. And then beyond with, so much more with their cohort and more. So, okay, I think we're at time. Christine, did you want to say anything to wrap us up?
you.
Oh, no, thank you all so much for attending and for sharing your wisdom. I know that I learned a lot as well, and I'm excited to take the Enneagram test. And I'm putting the link slowly into the chat, a free one that I found. So
thank you.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much for doing that. And just thank you so much. I've learned so much from Kristina and Rebecca today. Like, it was so great hearing everything that you're doing, and you inspire me about where our profession is going, because there's so many wonderful people out here that are willing to help and really to step in and create these relationships of trust and mentorship and mentee. And we're all going to do this to give back to each other, right? To make a meaningful, better place for all of us to work. So thank you. Okay, I'll be quiet now, Kristina. I don't know what you need to do. Oh, you're gonna paste the links, right? So thank you so much. I just love it so much, having these kinds of conversations with one another. Anytime we have one of these events, I just think, wow, we work with really amazing colleagues and friends. So
And I guess I'll just add super quickly, and I think someone mentioned maybe they couldn't copy and paste the email addresses. I mean, our names are in all of the announcements, so you can probably find our names super Googleable. But I'm happy to take questions from anyone, after the fact. So please don't hesitate to reach out to. I think all of us are happy to.
For sure, yes.
100%. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Christine.
Thank you.
Kristina and Rebecca. So are we signing off now? I don't know. Okay. Aloha, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.